When you hear a really beautiful piece of music, what do? Do you tap your foot? Do you hum along? Do you dance in your seat? It's hard not to move when we hear something that makes us feel good. The same thing happens when we hear something that makes us feel bad. We might cover our ears or even put our hands in front of our mouth because we do want to hear it. Hearing things that are uncomfortable or unpleasant is actually one of the most common phobias out there. And while many of us may think this is just a quirky little fact about ourselves, this fear can actually have huge effects on our daily lives, causing stress and anxiety. So what exactly causes this fear, and how can we overcome it? Let us look at what happens in your body and brain when you hear something that doesn't sound quite right. Imagine you're sitting quietly in a room when suddenly you hear a loud crash from somewhere outside. Your heart pounds, your skin might prickle with goosebumps, and your breathing becomes faster and more shallow. In a way, this is similar to the response that you get when you see a scary movie. This is your fight, flight, or freeze response kicking into gear. Your body recognizes that something potentially dangerous has happened and prepares itself to either confront the danger, run away from it, or freeze and hope you didn't notice it. In the case of the loud noise, this response is triggered by the auditory system. When the sound waves hit your eardrums, they send signals via the auditory nerve to the brainstem. From here, these signals are sent to the amygdala, which is an area of the brain that recognizes and labels the stimulus as threatening. At the same time, the hippocampus sends information to the cortex, the wrinkly outer part of the brain, so that you can identify where the noise came from. So now you know that it was a loud crash from outside. But if the sound had been a screeching, high-pitched whine, then the process would be slightly different. Instead of the cortex being able to identify the sound, the signal goes straight from the amygdala to the hypothalamus. This area of the brain activates the fight, flight, or freeze response, triggering the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones make your heart race and cause you to breathe faster and make it harder to focus on anything other than the source of the noise. Why do some sounds make us feel this way? Well, according to clinical psychologist Dr. Rebecca Watson, it all has to do with pitch and volume. Sounds that are very high-pitched or very low-pitched are more likely to trigger the fight, flight, or freeze response. This is because these sounds are less common in everyday life, so they're more likely to be unexpected. Sudden, unexpected noises are what make us feel the most amount of stress, because our brains don't know how to react to them. Our brains evolved to expect certain sounds to happen in everyday life, like the crashing of waves or the tweeting of birds. But when we hear sounds that are too high or too low, our brains don't know whether to fight, flight, or freeze, which means that we experience more anxiety. High-pitched noises aren't the only ones that can make us feel uncomfortable. Any sudden noises can make us feel this way too. If someone slams a door or shouts at you, you'll probably feel a bit stressed after because you weren't expecting that to happen. But this feeling will pass pretty quickly once you realize that it was on a car screeching outside your window or a drill starting up in your apartment building. On the other hand, if you were outside and heard a sudden high-pitched whine coming from somewhere nearby, you'd probably feel way more anxious, because you would know what it was, and therefore how to react to it. And it's not just the pitch and volume of the sound that affects us. It also matters whether the sound is consistent or inconsistent. According to psychology professor Dr. Michael J. Gitlin, humans and other animals alike are most afraid of sounds that are unpredictable. A lot of animals make sounds that are fairly consistent, like the croaking of frogs or the chirping of crickets. This means that once you've heard the sound a few times, you know exactly what it is and how to react to it. If you hear an unfamiliar sound made by an animal in the wild, though, you're more likely to be afraid because you don't know whether it's a threat or not. For example, you might be afraid of the screech of a hawk because you don't know if it's planning on eating you. But you're really less afraid of the consistent tweeting of birds because you know that it's not a threat. The human brain works the exact same way. When we hear an inconsistent sound, we don't know whether to fight, flight, or freeze, so we feel more anxious. For example, if you were outside and heard someone screaming, you'd probably feel more threatened by that scream. If the person was hiding behind a tree and you could unsee them, this is because the scream is both a sudden and unexpected sound, and you don't know who it came from. On the other hand, if you were at home and heard someone screaming, you'd probably feel less anxious about it because you know that the sound is coming from next door and not from outside your window. Even though we all have different fears, this is the main reason why certain sounds make us uncomfortable. But not everyone who experiences this discomfort has a phobia. While the fear of loud noises is quite common, the fear of certain frequencies of sound is a lot rarer. Around 10 to 15% of people are afraid of loud noises, and 20% of people are afraid of high-pitched sounds. Around 4% of people, however, have phonophobia, which is the fear of any kind of sound. People with this phobia cannot tolerate any background noise and need absolute silence. Otherwise, they can become overwhelmed and start shaking, sweating, and experiencing difficulty breathing. According to Healthline, this fear can be so intense that it causes those affected to isolate themselves from society, soundproofing their homes and avoiding going outside altogether. But not everyone with a fear of certain sounds has phonophobia. Some people might only be afraid of high-pitched sounds like the whine of a drill, while others might be afraid of low-pitched sounds like the rumble of a bus. There are even people who are afraid of inconsistent sounds, but not high or low-pitched sounds. Now you might be thinking, what can I do about this? How can I overcome my fear of certain sounds? One of the best ways to overcome this fear is to expose yourself to the sounds that you're afraid of, says Healthline. By exposing yourself to these sounds, you'll eventually get used to them and they won't seem as scary as before. Virtual reality is actually a great tool for doing this, because you can expose yourself to whatever sound you're afraid of without actually having to be around it. You can use VR to simulate being outside in a busy city, for example, or try out the new ASMR feature, which uses AI to recreate any environment you want. You could also try to identify the source of the sound that you're afraid of and determine whether it is actually a threat. Most of the time, these sounds aren't actually dangerous, but we think that they are because our brains have tricked us, as into thinking that they're unexpected and unpredictable. Learning where the sound is coming from and understanding that it's not a threat should make you feel better. If you're worried that you might have a serious phobia that's disrupting your everyday life, then talk to a mental health professional. They can help you figure out what the root of your fear is and develop strategies to overcome it. Phobias are very treatable conditions, and you shouldn't let them stop you from doing the things you love. Auditory comfort is important for our mental health and overall well-being. Being able to relax and enjoy pleasant sounds can make us feel calm and happy. Experiencing auditory discomfort, on the other hand, can cause us to feel stressed and anxious. Understanding what makes us feel comfortable and uncomfortable when we hear certain sounds can help us to relax and enjoy the world around us a little more. So the next time you hear a beautiful song, take a moment to appreciate the complex interaction between your ears and your brain that's allowing you to feel so much emotion from just hearing a few notes. Click here to watch one of these next videos and let us know in the comments which sound makes you the most uncomfortable. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.